You may not be familiar with the name Rosalynn Newhouse. She's the president of the board of the state's homeschool organization. Probably not a typical guest that you would think would come on to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. But many of us know that as a result of COVID-19, many entrepreneurs, many executives, many people are being asked to take on a role that they never aspired to take on, which is homeschooling, being a homeschool teacher, instructor. Rosalynn gives 3 great points in this episode, like really phenomenal points on how you can improve your own mindset around this, as well as your own skill set. So many things that she shared will give you probably a lot of relief in the fact that you're doing a lot of things right, as well as some ideas on how you can improve. I know for me and my wife who are homeschooling a number of children, 6 children now at home, there was some great insight here. I'm really excited to share this with my wife. And I think that you're going to find the same. I would really encourage you to think about people, maybe in your database, in your sphere, that may be struggling with this, and share this episode with them, whether it be in audio or video format. Get it out to them. I think it's going to really help a lot of people come to grips with the situation that we're in and realize that they're probably doing better than they thought. And so I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope it's very timely and relevant, valuable for you based on where you're at. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on it. So enjoy. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddart, and I'm very excited about today's episode because it's bringing help where real estate agents didn't think that they would ever need the help, and that's how to be a better homeschool teacher. I have with me today Rosalynn Newhouse. She is the president of the board of the state's homeschool organization, Oregon Home Education Resource Network. And I'm very grateful that you're here, Rosalynn. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, it's interesting. This show is really designed to help real estate agents to grow their business without sacrificing everything else, to inspire and to help them to really pursue their potential. And it's been interesting how all of a sudden this has been a curveball out of left field. You know, most real estate agents don't sign up to homeschool, right? They already have so much work that they do at many hours of the day. The homeschool isn't one of the commitments that they necessarily sign up for. I know that's true of all people. My wife, who she and I are ambitious enough to have 6 children, she never aspired to be a homeschool teacher. So I've seen very firsthand the challenges that come from homeschooling. And I can only imagine those professionals that are also, having to run a business out of their home, right? These busy moms and dads. Again, that's me, but my wife, fortunately, is an RN and doesn't have the same commitments that a real estate agent has right now. And so I know that there's a lot of people that are in this audience that are going to greatly benefit from the conversation we're going to have. For those that tune into this episode, you're going to get 3 critical points, 3 lessons that are going to help you be a better homeschool teacher during this unique time in the world's history. So Rosalynn, tell us a little bit about the Oregon Home Education Resource Network. What is it and kind of what's its mission?
Well, the OHAN, which is a lot easier to say, is a it's a statewide organization where entirely volunteer run, and this was started about 25 or 30 years ago as a resource network for homeschoolers across Oregon to help each other find resources and connection, and also to follow legislative updates regarding homeschooling, and basically a place to go to for homeschoolers to get some reliable information. When I started homeschooling my son about 30 years ago, there really wasn't anything like this, and there weren't very many homeschoolers in Oregon, and it was all sort of figure it out as you go along, invent the wheel as you need to, and the formation of this organization really helped me and a lot of other homeschoolers be able to have a sort of central point of reference to get information and to find other homeschoolers and connect up. And of course, it's grown tremendously. Homeschooling as an activity has grown tremendously in Oregon, and it's a lot easier too with the internet to find information and connect up with each other. So we still provide activities and connection. We have a website, ohen.org. We have a Facebook group that has about 3,000 members where homeschoolers can share ideas and experiences and ask questions and hook up. So we're here for homeschoolers, and in recent weeks we've also made are resources available to what we call school at homers. And it's important to realize that homeschooling is really an intentional activity. People do a lot of research, they do a lot of planning, they make decisions and go into homeschooling with some sort of an idea of where they're going and what they're going to be doing with it. And today, the parents of children who have been in public or private schools didn't have that opportunity to plan or research or figure anything out or even make a decision. It was all, you put into your lap and hello, you're a homeschooler. And we do like to remind people that it's a little different. Number one, that homeschoolers are also going through a big transition because we don't usually stay at home. We're out and doing things and visiting places and mingling with other homeschoolers. And the idea of staying at home in one place involves kind of a resetting of our own processes and understanding. But we've also made our experiences available to the general community, saying, well, we do have some experience in working at home with our kids, and we'll share that with you.
That's really interesting because you're right. This probably isn't a very fair sample of what it's like to homeschool children. I know I have friends who homeschool kids, and they're oftentimes doing field trips very regularly. They're out seeing things, learning in nature, like out in the real world. And yeah, this looks very different where you can't do many of those things. And so that's a great point, is that it's an adjustment for everybody, even those people that were already homeschooling.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great point. Let's talk about, there's 3 points that we want to talk about. Kind of this first perspective. Obviously, in fact, I have to laugh a little bit because this past week, my wife celebrated about everything you can celebrate other than a birthday. So it was nurse, like RN or Nurse Appreciation Week. I believe it was also Teacher Appreciation Week. It was also Mother's Day. She's like, I deserve like a crown this week because I'm like all three of those. I'm an RN, I'm a homeschooler, and I'm definitely a mom. And
Right.
So let's talk about kind of some ideas and some tactics to help those that are wanting to be kind of better survive if
Mhm.
if that's all they can do right now is just like have good mental health and survive, and as well as those that are like, hey, I think I got this, but like I want to learn a little bit more, like I want to be better, I want to thrive at this role. Let's talk about kind of kids not having the same perspective. I think that was a point that you'd made to me that I thought was really interesting.
Well, yeah, and it's I'm glad that you brought up that point about having good mental health, because um the first thing that happened when we all started, when the schools got closed down and all the kids are suddenly staying at home, and um the we, as homeschoolers, we were really kind of hit with a flood of people saying, what curriculum do I use? How do I keep them on track with math? Which reading program? What's my schedule look like? Do I have to, what about recess? And they're suddenly trying to recreate school in the living room or the kitchen. And a really important thing to consider here is that, we're all, as adults, we're all experiencing this amazing, unprecedented, unexpected, unusual event, and trying to cope with it, trying to find ways to cope with it. And there are a lot of ways that we're just trying to like maintain and keep going and do everything as usual, and things really aren't as usual. And it's important to remember that this is new and different, and it's it's not like a snow day or a hurricane where it's going to be over by the end of the week. We really have to stop and think about how are we reacting to this, and what kind of stresses are on it. There are a lot of people have anxiety over employment, and just kind of refiguring their whole household dynamic, and it is stressful, and people who are experiencing anxiety and stress should really understand that that's a normal response. It's not, you shouldn't worry too much. This is weird, and you can kind of roll with the punches and figure out strategies for getting along with that. But very, very important to realize is that kids are going through that same thing, and they don't have the same emotional resources and experience as adults do to deal with that and find resources. And it, if you're say an 8-year-old kid and all of a sudden school's closed and you can't go see your friends and your parents are worried and you know, what kind of environment is that for them? It's weird and it's scary maybe, and it's unusual, and the kids are very likely to mirror that stress and anxiety and act out, and they're undergoing stress and anxiety themselves. They hear about this terrible virus and people are dying, and are we going to die, and is mommy going to die? There's a lot going on there, and arithmetic kind of isn't that important in the face of, how do I survive through the next day in a kid's mind. So we really like to remind people that you should be paying attention to your kids' emotional responses and how they are actually doing in life before you insist that they sit down at the kitchen table and do 6 hours of workbook. So that's a we tell people, really pay attention to your kids, take care of their emotional needs, and work on how your family's doing. Take some time, and we're kind of, I don't want to say fortunate, but it's not a bad thing that the schools shut down just before what would normally be spring break. So, a lot of people were expecting a couple of weeks off of school anyway. So you can just, take that time and say, okay, let's take a couple of weeks and just not do school. Let's just spend some time. And okay, we've been in this for, 6 weeks or so. You can still take that time. Just say, okay, this week's just family time. Let's do it.
I love that. You'd mentioned to me about the importance of having setting up an environment conducive to learning. And I think often when parents hear that, they think, okay, I need school supplies, I need a desk, I need a computer, I need good proper internet. But you're right, like this learning environment goes far beyond like the things you can touch, right? It's also the stuff that you can feel, the overall mindset. And I love it, just giving yourself permission to have this look different, and to really monitor the overall kind of comfort and well-being of your children. And I agree with you. I think, I heard it said back in when September 11th happened, many children were quite traumatized because they thought that airplanes continued to run into buildings because we kept watching it over and over again. Like they couldn't separate the fact that this is just a replay. They thought our world was like in an ongoing war of planes running into buildings. And so, I think we need to be aware that like kids don't have the same ability to grasp and the same background of understanding, and maybe don't listen to all, the entire news picture of what's happening. If they just hear some of the sound bites of thousands of people dying, and you're right, it could very well be that they're actually concerned about dying themselves, and like without any cause, right? So I think it's super important, like you've said, to maybe worry less about are they totally up to speed and everything scholastic, and are they doing well, right? Are they in a good spot emotionally?
Absolutely.
That's a great point. Let's move on to point number 2. You said kids learn regardless of whether or not they have a book in front of them, and kind of having this concept of a learning path that maybe doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what they'd have in schools. Talk to us a little bit about that, Rosalynn.
Well, this is a really key point with homeschooling, and it's one of the reasons a lot of people choose to homeschool. And there are many reasons, but the model for learning in a classroom, in a public school, or in many private schools is, there's group instruction. You're teaching a group of children pretty much the same thing at the same time, and it's efficient and more or less workable to run with, schedules and benchmarks and expectations and grade levels and that sort of thing. And when you get into working with a kid one-on-one, you find out that children really they're just natural learners. Everything that happens, and adults too, everything that happens, it really is a learning experience. Something is in front of you and you observe it and you interact with it, and then you look at what happened, and then you go back and you work on it some more, and you gain understanding and experience with it. And I think if you look at anything that you do for the first or the 10th or the 100th time, you're doing it, as you're doing it, you're learning something from it. And then you're applying that knowledge to the next thing that you do. And we look at, what is school? What's the point of school? Well, what is, look at that when you're working with your own kids. What is the point of school? Are you trying to help them become functional and successful adults? That's probably the answer most people would give. So what does it take to become a functional and successful adult? Well, maybe you need to know how to fix a flat tire, or make a loaf of bread, or cook dinner, or clean a living room, or make a bed, or take care of a baby, right? So there are a lot of things that you can learn as a child that are going to help you become a functional and successful adult. And while some of those things are in books or on the internet, they're also accessible through just doing them and watching somebody else do them, or having somebody else show you how to do them. So things like arithmetic and reading, which we think of as kind of the core subjects, and where else are you going to learn arithmetic outside of a textbook? You can learn arithmetic from a lot of places. If you build something, you're doing measuring and adding and subtracting. If you buy the equipment to build your thing with, you're doing a lot of math there. If you cook something, you're doing a lot of measuring and combining. But we love cooking. Cooking is a great homeschooling or school at homing experience, because you've got chemistry and economics and physics and nutrition and math, a lot of math, and planning and execution and cooperation. So you can, take some activity that your child is interested in, like cooking or building or sports or gardening, and almost build a whole learning experience around that.
Well, what a different perspective, right? I love how you said that. I actually saw my wife pick up on that early on. I came in the house from my home office, and she said, today we're working on proper diet, and we're like learning about calories and carbohydrates and fiber and all these things. And I thought, wow, I didn't learn that
Perfect.
until later in life. And I would have loved to have known that, right? As far as
Yeah.
like what all that stuff means on the back and why it's important to understand, like the back of a label. And like another one was about budgeting. And I thought all this stuff that really from a logistics standpoint, it's probably difficult to teach in schools, and or it's just like
Right.
you said, not part of the core curriculum, but it comes down to being an effective adult, right? You sometimes hear people will kind of bemoan the fact of like, boy, I never learned how to do this stuff in school. Like, why didn't they teach me this stuff? Guess what? Now's your chance to fill in all those gaps, right? All those things
Absolutely.
that maybe aren't in the state's eyes as important for young people to learn, but in the eyes of parents, it's like, this is essential. Like, this is stuff that will help you with your health, with your wealth, with your relationships, right? Like you said, taking care of a baby, like cleaning up, like all that stuff is so critical.
Yeah, and learning does, almost all learning, and even, educators will agree with this, is that learning has more relevance and it's more successful when it's tied to practical experience. If you're sitting in a classroom and reading about how engines work without ever having seen an engine or put one together, then all your knowledge is theoretical, and you probably forget it in a year or a couple of years or a month, or by the time you actually need to use an engine, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you learn it by putting an engine together, it's going to stick with you.
Yeah, boy, such a great point. Like what a unique opportunity we have right now, to really have education look different, and not have that be a bad thing. It could be a very, very good thing. And really, even maybe as things go, like as this passes, right, and kids are back in school, like what a way for parents to then take things that they're learning at school and bring it home and continue the education, right? And hopefully this transforms all of us to look at this unique opportunity we have to have an impact upon children, and our role in being
Exactly.
educators. That education is not just to be delegated, right? But it's like we're partnering with the schools, right? And we're looking for opportunities to help these young people develop and grow. So that's super exciting point. Let's go to point number 3. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rosalynn.
I said that's a really good viewpoint.
Yeah, thank you. Point number 3, don't be too anxious about not knowing about getting behind. I know that that's kind of the concern of a lot of parents of like, I'm concerned my kids are going to get behind. Talk to us a little bit about kind of a different perspective on that.
Well, yeah, that is a very common fear. You know, gosh, my kid's going to be out of school for 3 months. The schools aren't going to even reopen. What if they're behind next year? What if I can't catch up? What if I can't teach them? And it's important to remember that all the kids are at home and out of class. Nobody's going to be behind. And, you know, guaranteed, I absolutely guarantee that when kids do go back to school, whether it's in September or later, however this thing plays out, one of the primary concerns of educators is going to be, let's get these kids back on track. Let's figure out what they need to do to get back in the swing of things. And, you know, it's not going to be like you've been, you know, missing everything that other people have been experiencing. Everybody's at home. Everybody's doing this. And the schools, too, are really making a great effort to provide some sort of service to the kids and to the families at home. And that'll, depending on your school and on your teacher, the degree of interaction you have will differ from one to the other. But everybody wants all the kids to succeed. And there is a lot of information available on the internet. There's some tremendous free classes and activities and resources just at, you know, the touch of a keystroke or, you know, click of a mouse. Our website, our Facebook page, which is called Homeschooling in Oregon, Talk with OHAN, is open for anyone to join who wants to follow along with other homeschoolers and other school at homers on what they're doing, ideas, curriculum ideas, different kind of materials that are helpful. There's a website called Khan Academy, KHAN, which has hundreds of instructional videos for all age levels at on different subjects, and you can pick and choose and you can watch them together. You can have the kids watch them. There's a website called coreknowledge.org, which is pretty comprehensive rundown from K through 12 of what kids typically should be learning at different grade levels, and they have free and downloadable curriculum. So that's a resource. There's a school in Oregon, a private school, that is delivering free online Zoom classes for all age groups, all grade levels. It's
Hear me, Rosalynn? Looks like you cut out just a little bit.
be learning
Looks like our audio is a little bit interrupted. Rosalynn, these are great resources. I'm going to ask that you maybe email me these. I'll be sure and put them in the show notes so people have access. Are you there, Rosalynn? Looks like we cut out here a little bit. Anyway, such great resources, Rosalynn. I want to thank you so much for your contribution to today's show and really helping all of us really kind of rise up and have the right mindset and the right skill set to be great at homeschoolers. So anyway, for those of you that are in a new spot where you are looking really to kind of shine in this new unsolicited new role that you have, hopefully these resources have been helpful. I would encourage you to take advantage of this unique opportunity that you have with your children and to realize that at some point you look back and say, boy, that was a special time. That was a really unique time. And hopefully the tools that we have shared here allow you to do that. And as many of you know, my mission with the Think Bigger Real Estate Show is to even help you to think bigger than real estate.